with me. Don't leave me now.
Church Chicago's Power Hour. I'm your host, Angie Mims, and
Terrence Keys,
TD, a.k.a. Terrence Daniels.
do you believe that God's going to turn it around?
I got to.
Definitely.
Why?
Why? Because he's did it before.
Come on.
And he'll do it again.
God,
Yes.
and
Yes.
you can do it again.
Yes. Yes. Come on here.
Come on, I better leave that alone. I forget
Somebody
my
calling
key.
you right
Somebody
now, Lord.
calling you right now, Lord. If it ain't one thing,
Yes.
I better go. God's going to turn it around.
And I feel like we have to encourage the people because so many people are just truly depressed. They're going through the holiday blues, and we want you to know that you don't have to be discouraged. But you can in fact be encouraged because God's going to turn it around.
God's turn it around. It's me again. God's gonna turn it around. I'm calling on you. You did it before.
Steve Stanton.
Let's reminisce. Yeah. Woo.
All right. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to I Do, I Did, I Don't on the What's in It for the Black People Media Network. I'm going to keep saying that, Maze, because I really do believe this will be a network at some point. This is Tasha here. Make sure you go and like What's in It for the Black People page and What's in It for the Black People Media so that you get notifications when shows are coming on air. But this morning, I appreciate those that are joining. I do, I did, I don't. We had a wonderful conversation last Sunday, and we spoke with Angela Oyafumike, who talked to us about she told us who she is, told us about life, told us about growing up and marrying, and then about getting divorced after 40 years of marriage. And we began to talk about forgiveness, and that seemed to really, really resonate with a lot of folks. And so we are going to continue the conversation with her today, this morning, and she's going to continue giving us some wisdom. There was some sage wisdom shared last week. So again, this show is all about supporting people through the divorce process. It's about helping you to thrive. It is about imparting knowledge that I acquired through the process that was hard earned. And as some people say, the old people say, ain't no sense like bought sense, ain't no sense like bought sense. But I don't want everybody to have to go through the same experiences because of lack of knowledge. And so the show exists in order to give you that information, in order to empower you in the process. And even for those who aren't divorced, if that's not your experience, I think there's still some applicable lessons that are learned here and some things to help you think through whether you're planning to get married, whether you're planning through a divorce, and whether you are living after divorce. So good morning to all that are joining. I really appreciate seeing you on. Good morning. Good morning. Let's get started. Let's kind of jump in here. Angela will be joining us in a little bit, but let me recap exactly where we were last week and the kinds of things we talked about. So one of the things that Angela said that really sort of, really confused me, and she said, I don't forgive people for shit. And I was like, wait, what? What do you mean you don't? That's not Christian. That's not, how do you get through life and you don't really forgive people for things? And what she talked about is the need to forgive oneself and to do that first, because oftentimes we are so focused on forgiving the other party that we don't do the work to forgive ourselves. And forgiving yourself, we always talk about forgiveness being important and that forgiveness is for you. And it is truly important. It is truly for you, but not just for you to release the other person of any infractions or wrongdoing. It is important for you to release yourself. It allows you to take ownership for your role. And so we had, Angela walked us through quite a few statements of, I forgive myself for not believing in myself enough, for not believing that I could make it on my own, for allowing myself to believe the negative things that have been said about me, for not trusting my own intuition and myself when self was telling me, and even the spirit was telling me. It is absolutely a process, that process of forgiveness. In divorce, I think, I'm going to share with you a resource a little bit later, but in divorce, I think it is a circular process that continues to happen, especially if you have children, because you have to continue to interact with your former spouse. And that can be quite difficult. So it continues to cycle you through the issues of forgiveness over and over again. And so we talked about forgiving yourself first and why that is so very important. And I will tell you that once I spoke to her and had that epiphany, it really released me from a lot, because it helped me to realize and to voice and to acknowledge that there were things that I felt and that I had not resolved within myself, because there are times that we blame ourselves and we're thinking, well, why did I do this? Or why didn't I know? Or, I had this feeling a long time ago, but I didn't do anything about it. I felt like this wasn't right, but everybody else was telling me this is what I should do, or this is how I should handle it. And so we do have to resolve that within ourselves and make sure that we work through that issue of forgiving ourselves. And so today we're going to, we'll recap that a little bit, but then we're also going to focus on talking through grief, because there really truly is a grief process that goes along with divorce. And it is distinctly different from the grief process that we experience in death. And so one of the resources that was recommended to me immediately by a therapist was this book called The Truth About Children and Divorce, and a subtitle, Dealing with the Emotions So You and Your Children Can Thrive. So I'll just show you what this book looks like. I haven't gotten through the whole book yet. It was recommended right away, and I knew that this was not something that I could start on right away. I needed to take, a moment to really step back and work on processing my own grief, because I recognized that was absolutely going to happen, that I was absolutely angry about quite a few things, and I needed to give myself time, and I was not going to rush that time either. I deserved to give myself the time that I needed to heal and to follow the process. And I was very cognizant of that, okay, I'm in the stage of being very angry right now. And now I'm in this stage of just of feeling sadness, because this is, my entire life is changing. The children's lives are changing. So one of the things this gentleman talks about related to grief is, he says, first of all, the fact that it's distinctly different from grief related to a death. He says, grief following theoretical reconcilable losses, like divorce, is similar to, but in many ways more complicated than grief following irreconcilable losses like death. And it's the whole thought that it's irreconcilable in the sense that there's a loss of a person who's no longer there, that you no longer see in death, that you no longer get to interact with. However, in divorce, that continues to happen, that you're grieving the relationship and the loss of that relationship, the loss of those years, the loss of the love that once was. But you're still interacting with that person. They haven't gone away completely. And if you have children, that still needs to happen quite a lot. And so a couple other things he says about the grief cycle of divorce and the fact that it's different. If any of you are familiar with Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's model of the stages of grief and bereavement, she sort of talks how you go through these periods of anger and then denial, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And in that model, it's somewhat linear. Like you're kind of following through step by step, and your therapist and you can identify where you are in the process. All right, and so Angela is joining us now. We'll get her on, and I'll keep talking through this periods of grief and this grief cycle. But the key difference is that divorce-related grief does not move in a straight line or in one direction. And what he terms as the cyclical model of grief, people instead cycle repeatedly through a three-part phase consisting of love, anger, and sadness. So we'll spend some time talking about that. And here is our guest, Miss Angela Oyafumike. And I think I got it right today.
You got it right.
Hey,
Got it right.
Hello, sis. How are you?
I am good. Good.
Awesome. I am glad to have you back. The therapists are absolutely, the listeners, excuse me, are absolutely excited to have you back because you dropped some knowledge on us last week and some wisdom about forgiveness. So I've been recapping that for folks so that they get a chance to, for any listeners that were not here last week, they get the quick recap on what we talked about in terms of forgiving yourself. So we've gone through that, and then I've started to introduce this topic of the grief cycle and how that cycle is distinctly different from the cycle of grief and death. And so, I'm sharing a resource that I have called The Truth About Children and Divorce by Robert E. Emery, who's a PhD psychiatrist and has done a lot, years and years and years of research around divorce, and specifically as it relates to children and the impact on them and what parents need to do in order to co-parent effectively for the benefit of the children. But I want to go back because people had a lot of comments about divorce and about forgiveness in divorce and freeing themselves. I think that what you shared was really freeing for people. So I want to go back and start there, and then we can go and continue to talk through the process of grief and grieving the divorce and kind of moving through this circular pattern of anger and sadness and love even in divorce, and how that continues to show up because you continue to interact with your ex. It's not as fine that the finality isn't there like it is with a person who has passed on. So for the listeners, as Angela kind of talks and recaps, if you have questions, put them in the chat so that I can see them and we can actually talk through them with her. So Miss Angela Oyafumike, let's go, lady. Last time we ran out of time, so I'm not going to do as much talking. I'll ask some questions. I definitely want to hear from you listeners. Again, for those just joining, this is I Do, I Did, I Don't with Tasha. And my special guest today is Angela Oyafumike. All right, Angela, so let's talk forgiveness again. Let's talk about forgiving yourself. And once you have gotten to that point of forgiving yourself, and I want you to recap a little bit about the statements that you had around I forgive me. And then let's go from there.
Well, the way I did the whole forgiveness piece, briefly, the recap, it was just learning how to forgive myself. I remember distinctly when my ex, actually, I don't even like using the term ex, my former spouse, my former husband, when he came at me because he really didn't want the divorce. And in my situation, he kind of drug things out unnecessarily. And so he actually came to me and asked me if I could just forgive him, and we could try and work through it and what have you. I told him, ain't nothing for me to forgive you for, because I really don't. I mean, people look at it really harsh. How does she not forgive anybody anything? While I no longer practice Christianity and I do practice African voodoo, or some will call Ifa, the one thing that I was clear about was from my Christian upbringing, forgiveness really is about self. It really is for you. And so I had to learn, as I stated, to forgive me. Forgive me for not believing that Goddess had put something in me that was enough. I didn't think I was enough.
Mm-hmm.
I had to forgive me for not believing that I could do this thing without him in my life. I had to forgive me for not tapping into the gifts and purpose that Goddess had given me. And I had to forgive me for not believing that I even had the talent, skill, or anything to do it. And so when he looks at me to forgive him, one of the things I'm big on has always been consistency. I've been a consistency girl for as long as I can remember. At 59, consistency. At 29, consistency. At 19, consistency.
Okay.
And so the one thing I can attribute to my former spouse was that he was consistent. He was always consistent. I just chose to not believe what he showed me, because when we're in love, we don't want to believe those negative things that we may see.
Right.
Or we're so in love. They say that thing about love is blind. Love chooses to be blind. It's not blind. It just chooses. It makes a choice
Right.
to be blind. It chooses, I can handle that or I can't handle that. And so it's the same thing, because there's always a choice. There's light, there's dark, there's good, there's evil, there's bad, there's wonderful. There's always these choices.
Uh-huh.
And so I chose to ignore the red flags from day one. They were there. They were always there. But I chose to ignore them. And so why would I forgive the man for choosing to be who he is and walking in the truth of who he is? And for everything, like I used to teach my children, for every action, there's a reaction. There's a consequence to everything that you do. So that's why it is always imperative that we choose wisely. Now, if I'm going around forgiving you and I base it on the Christian tenets, which basically say to us, you forgive a person, most folks think in forgiving, it means that we now reconcile to the point of fellowship. If I look at Christianity, here's the other piece. If Jesus died on the cross, as we believe that he did,
Right.
okay, and Jesus died for your sins to take on whatever the consequence is of that sin, that means I don't have to forgive you, and now I got to take on the consequence of your shit.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty early on a Sunday to say that, but okay, here we go.
Hey, here we go. I mean, this is a real show. This is about being very real, very honest, speaking the truth. So let's go with it.
So my thing is, if we look at what most Christians believe forgiveness is, it's he took on your sins so that you wouldn't have to pay the consequences.
Right.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because the consequence of sin is what? Death. That's what we're taught. Okay? If I'm forgiving you, but forgiveness is supposed to be about me, to make me feel better, to do something to help me move along, then I am literally saying to the universe, I'm going to give them a pass so that they don't have to deal with the consequence of their behavior. If that's what we're going to believe, that whole salvific action on the cross was about.
Right.
I'm not trying to do that. I'm not trying to do that. How does that serve my highest good? And how does that benefit me if you're telling me forgiveness is more about me than the person. I need you to deal with the consequences of your behavior.
So true.
Now, I don't know how your God, the universe, or whatever you call your higher creator, I don't know how they are going to deal with you on that. But what I know is that we live in a reciprocal universe. And in so doing, it requires that you deal with your shit. You make your bed, you lay in it. If you wrong me,
I'm gonna pause
then
for just a
deal
second.
with it.
Right. And I think that's absolutely appropriate. We deal with the consequences of our behavior, and I think in our decisions, right? And that's what you're saying here is it's so easy to look at the other person and blame the other person, especially if they've done something that really was the catalyst for the divorce, okay? And whether that had been happening over time. But there's so much power in you stepping back and saying, okay, but what decisions did I make? What decisions did I decide along the way when I saw those red flags and when I kept going? No matter why you chose to do it, I think I can look back and see a lot of things, a lot of my decisions were based on the Christian doctrine that I'd been taught. And I would dare say taught incorrectly in many cases and indoctrinated with things that were not well balanced, okay? So, we're taught we need to be submissive as wives. I felt in so many cases like I had to make myself smaller so that my former spouse could be bigger. Instead of being in a larger pond, and instead of us both really moving forward, that weighed on me. And I remember once just someone preaching at church, this woman, and I just cried and cried. And I talked to her about that, just feeling like, and she was talking to young women, and I went, that's how I feel. And I've been in this marriage for more than a decade. I'm going on, at that point it probably was 15 years or so. And so I can look back now with more clarity and I can see. I remember the day before my wedding, I was depressed, deeply sad about a discussion that we'd had and about how the things that I wanted, I felt were being minimized, and even small things for the day of the wedding. And I just remember sitting there, I'm having my wonderful spa day, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, this is not right. This is not right. I shouldn't feel like this the day before my wedding. And there were distinct points that I can go back and remember. And so for me, I had to go back and say, I forgive myself for not listening to myself, for not listening to the truth that was buried within me that I continued to deny, or I continued to shove aside and say, well, the Christian thing to do is, or I continue to believe that's going to change, even though I had seen what things were. And so there are times that I stopped and I wanted to pause, because I think it's still, if you're fresh in the pain of divorce, you're still seeing what the other person did, and you're still focused on what they did, what they didn't do. And you're not giving enough weight to what you did do, whether that was good or bad, or the decisions and choices that you made along the way, because we have to own those. We have to own those in order to heal ourselves and forgive ourselves. So for anybody just joining, because I do see there are folks that are coming on, this is I Do, I Did, I Don't with Tasha. Good morning to you all. We are talking with Angela Oyafumike, who is, our topic today is forgiveness and grief and divorce. So we are continuing the discussion from last week because it was absolutely fantastic and we ran out of time, and she was gracious enough to come back this Sunday so that we can continue the conversation. And so I'm with you, Angela, when you talk about we have to allow people to own their choices, their decisions, and the consequences of those things, as opposed to rescuing them or releasing them for that, because otherwise life continues in, this crazy way. And so I'm looking at some of the comments that are here, and I just I want to go through some of those because these are, there's a lot of feelings, a lot of experiences that people have had with the church that have not been affirming when they've walked through a process of divorce. And so, there are folks here that are saying, divorce itself will make you feel empty and less than, and you feel betrayed, and you feel stupid, and you feel taken advantage of. And the church doesn't handle that well. You're in such a place of fragility and vulnerability, and the church doesn't really know how to handle that. And I guess we can't totally blame them. They're not trained to handle these things as well. However, that tends to be the place that we go for support. So I'm going to encourage those that are listening that, yes, you need your spiritual support in that sense, but you also need trained therapists who can help you to work through those things and give you a different perspective than you might get in your church. And that you can find Christian therapists. If that is, for me, that was important for me. I needed somebody to understand my orientation as I was thinking through and working through things. They are absolutely available to you, but you need the balanced perspective. So I really appreciate, the folks that are commenting here and just really talking through their experiences and how the church really, it's hard to not keep coming back to this because it's so much a part of my life, but just how the church did not really support them through the process. And those are some knocks, but they're well-deserved knocks at the same time. And so my goal is for us to do better, is for us to find ways to really embrace and support people, because it happens. It's going to happen in the church. The divorce rate is hovering around 50%, and the Christian divorce rate is not different from that. So it's going to happen. Pastors get divorced, deacons get divorced, ministers in the church get divorced, and we still haven't figured out how to handle this yet. So let's continue. Let's continue on. We talked about giving people room and space to deal with the consequences of their actions that they learn, and they get to move forward in life. And we get to do the same by acknowledging our own things. And so, you were going on. I do want to finish that topic of forgiveness, and then we're going to talk grief. We'll talk grief after the break, but we'll continue and we'll go on and talk through this issue of forgiveness. So you forgave yourself. You let your former spouse understand that these were choices that you made. You didn't have a whole lot to forgive him for, but you had a whole lot to forgive yourself for, and to give him room to live with his decisions. So I'm curious, once you said that to him, what was the reaction? Because that's so countercultural. What was the reaction when you told him you don't have anything to forgive him for?
He had a deer-like look. He literally, he didn't really say anything. He had shock on his face.
Stunned.
He was absolutely stunned. He just sat there looking at me like, I can't believe, who is this woman in front of me? And right now he's going through his own stages of grief.
Okay.
And I really understand where he is. That's not my issue, but I do understand where he is.
Right.
I was there the last 5 years of the marriage. In the house with him, I was going through those stages of grief. The first 2 years of me out of the house, I was going through those stages. And so I'm more on the healing better side of it now. And see, and I'm not, and I don't want anybody to think I'm minimizing what they're going through. I was married 40 years. I was with for 40 years.
Yes.
Our oldest child will be 40 this year, and we have 3. And so you're talking about, I'll be 60 this year. I'm 59 right now. So I have spent literally my entire adult life with this man.
So just a quick pause. Doesn't she look fabulous, y'all?
Thank you. I'll take that one. But the thing about it was, yeah, there were some things that I felt he did that wronged me.
Mm-hmm.
But the other side of that was what I started out with, consistency.
Yeah.
I saw that, and I saw his proclivities for that type of behavior, that type of disrespect early on. And
Okay.
so when it gets in your face and it's right there, you've got two choices: deal or don't deal.
All right, and right there, we're going to pause. We're going to pause. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back on I Do, I Did, I Don't on What's in It for the Black People Media.
The words that I said, one night in my bed, you'll never regret. And you, with your pretty brown eyes, I knew, baby, you would change my life. And you opened up my eyes to see I'm excited for our future.
of a kind, it feels so nice. Girl, you do it right. I miss.
And we are back. Good morning. Welcome to What's in It for the Black People Media. The show is I Do, I Did, I Don't with Tasha. And we have a special guest today, Angela Oyafumike, who is talking to us about forgiveness in divorce and about grief. And so we've talked about the forgiveness piece, and I want to start sort of shifting in the last half of this to grief, because I want to give people some tools at the end and some homework to do, if you will, around really recognizing sort of where you are in a relationship, where you are with the divorce, and if you are not there, some things that you might need to do in order to, because you're probably feeling some things and some things you might need to do to figure that out. So Angela, we left off, and I think you were finishing a statement, and I honestly, my brain is not catching what it was that you were finishing up, but it was a great stopping point for us. But I do want to transition and start to talk about grief, because you have quite some training in this area as well. And now your husband, your former husband now is just sort of stunned that you said, I don't really have anything to forgive you for. I needed to forgive myself. And you've done that work, and you're letting him go through his process and do his own work. And when I think about, I had enough knowledge to understand that I was going to go through a grief process, and I knew those stages, and I knew to pay attention and recognize those and not rush myself through the process, knowing that it's not something that you can rush. It is a very clear process. You're grieving a loss. But I did at some point start to feel like, well, have I forgiven this person? If, I continue to get upset and continue to get mad and continue to, sometimes just wish evil, wish she would just go away. And the reality is it's just that you're continuing to interact with the person who has, that was the other half of the relationship, who there once was love there, whatever happened, and now you're dealing with the fact that this relationship is broken up. In all honesty, I felt like, this person, my former spouse, never ever has to speak to me again for the rest of life. He would never have to say 2 words to me. However, we have 3 children that need to be raised, and they deserve to have their dad. They deserve to still think well of him and hear me speak well of him. They need him. I don't. They do. And so I had to put on the big girl panties and figure out, how am I going to get through this and still deal with the grief that I have, but to do it in a way that was appropriate for me, that honored me and my process, that honored him, honestly, and letting him deal with whatever he needed to deal with as well, and that honored the children along the way. And so, but I found myself being angry a lot, and I found myself coming back around and, angry, sad that this was the life that now exists, for the children, and watching their experience of the divorce and their life change from everything that they had known and that was normal for them, being sad about that, and then coming back to angry. And it didn't mean that I hadn't forgiven. It just meant that I was continuing to interact with this person that could absolutely evoke some of those emotions, because there was once love there. There was a connection. There were years and years of a relationship there. I think by the time I separated, my former spouse and I had been together for probably 22 years, something like that. From the time we dated and marriage all together, 22 years, which was more than half of my life at that point. And so it is a big change. It is a big adjustment in life. And, you have to deal with that. You have to deal with the fact that it's not going to be the same. You're not going to like some parts of it. There are parts that you are going to like. But you have to walk through these stages of grief. So you can continue. Let's talk through that and talk about how you felt yourself walking through those stages, and what knowledge and advice you have for listeners.
Well, I still walk through those stages. 40 years doesn't go away overnight, over a year, over 2 years, 3 years. I'm almost 3 years in now. Okay. And even though all of our children were adults with their own children, okay, we have 3 children. We share 7 grandchildren, and the adult children. And I found the oldest of my adult children is the one who's taking it the hardest.
Mm.
He will be 40 this year, and he is taking it worse than the other two. There, I have a 39-year-old, a 32-year-old, and a 30-year-old. And that 39-year-old is taking it harder than the other two.
Wow.
And so, in his eyes, I'm the bad guy, at least from what I can ascertain from him, because he's not really talking a lot. He talks to his younger brother, but he's not really talking a lot. But I changed the family dynamic as far as he's concerned.
Right.
So, there's the piece of having to address that. But I don't address it as much with him because, again, he's 39. He's a father. He's not with the mother of his child. And he's not with her because he's imitated some of what he's seen his father do with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm staying out of that. That's not my show over there. You do you. But yeah, you're going to deal with the pain and all of those emotions. There's a reason God has gave each of us these emotions and we feel the way we feel. And we need to stop feeling like we are supposed to be dealing with this differently. You have those emotions there for a reason. Lean into it, work with it. Part of my pastoral training was actually in psychopathology from a theological perspective. My personal opinion is everybody that's clergy needs to take some sort of psychology, psychopathology, or something type of training.
Yes.
Okay. Now, the church I was trained in and grew up in, but not from a child. He had pastors who were licensed clinical psychologists and all of that.
Oh,
and he
awesome.
was really big on making sure that the clergy could serve the people from all areas. And so when I went through my counseling, when I went through my sessions, I had a clergy who was a licensed clinical psychologist as well. I do the same thing with my pastoral care today. And I chose to follow that psychopathology piece because we need to go back and look at the root within the individual who's being counseled to see where some of the stuff that they're dealing with that they brought into the relationship is actually generational.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we don't realize that. And that goes a long way even in helping us. So when I looked at the grief, I come from a family of women who had been in abusive relationships. Horribly. I witnessed my own mother be horribly abused. And so the reason I was able to take some of the shit that my former was doing was because it was like, well, it ain't as bad as what I witnessed over here, but it was still abuse. It was psychological. It was financial. Early years, we had physical even. And so it just got to a point, the grief is always there. I think I don't know. I haven't gotten past the grief. So I don't know if the grief ever leaves. Okay. I know when loved ones cross over, it never leaves. You just learn how to have a new normal, if you will.
Right.
And so for me, I have moments even now where I get angry. In fact, I had one last week. I'm currently dating. It's a great situation, but we had a incident where I wasn't real pleased with him, and my anger went to my former spouse because I'm like, I can't believe you got me out here like this. You know, we were together for 40 years. This is not how I envisioned my life heading into 60. I don't have a spouse and I'm out here on the dating scene again.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't dated in 100 years and I'm out here trying to date, you know, and it's very different from what I remember dating to be over 40 years ago, you know. And so I get angry about that, but I deal with it. And then I look at the fact that, well, you know what? Here are your choices. You can date or not date, or you can go back to him and you know what you're going to deal with over there, or you can just lean into this newness of your life and mold it so that it serves your highest good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because that unmanaged grief is definitely it can be a powerful and overwhelming force if you don't learn how to deal with it. So the book that I was mentioning, that's The Truth About Children and Divorce, and the subtitle Dealing with the Emotions So You and Your Children Can Thrive. He talks about people really do swing between this love and anger and sadness cycle when they're grieving the loss of an intimate relationship, and you just really just acknowledge that and saying, you know, I'm upset with the person I'm dating now, and I'm like, what the hell? Why am I out here even dating? Why couldn't we just work this out and have a happy life? But that's changed. Not that you would go back to it, but acknowledging that feeling and that thought of, you know, I'm kind of pissed that I'm in this situation. However, here we are, and we're going to lean into this and make this life what we want it to be. So I really appreciate that you, one, are able to do that. Let me just say, you know, I haven't, because we're on air and publicly, Angela, I love you. I appreciate you so much because you're such an inspiration and such a good example of life handing you crap and you figuring it out and moving forward, but knowing the power that you have within. And it is, you know, I hope that the listeners are seeing that same thing and able to draw from that power that's emanating from you and understanding that they too can move forward. Life can be better on the other side. They can get through this. And it will be difficult. There will be times that you resent the fact that you're here, but it doesn't mean that you can't continue to move forward in life and to do so in a way that allows your spirit to thrive. So I'm going to take a quick identification break. It's I do, I did, I don't on What's in It for the Black People Media. This is Tasha talking to Angela Oyafumike. We have a few more minutes left over. We're going to just walk through you know, a couple of things that I want to give the listeners some tools, right? So you and I were having a conversation about how, okay, so one person posted on Facebook yesterday and said, a Facebook friend of mine said, man, these women be looking much better after they get divorced, right? And this is a woman. She's like, there, I said it. So true, right? So true. This happens. And it made me reflect and think is on our conversation because we're like, well, hell, how was I looking and how come nobody was telling me this? Like, what? Well, how come you didn't say something? If a sister was out here that bad and I was looking that sad and that toe down and broke down, and all of a sudden it's like, well, you look great. You seem happier. What did I seem like before? And how come nobody came and sat me down and said, sister girl, let's have a conversation? That's hard to do. People don't want to feel like they're in this place where they're breaking up a relationship or anything like that. But it's so necessary because so many of our friends see it and they see the toll that the relationship is taking on us, and they're there to support. And we need those that love it. We need some people sometimes to step up and say, I'm seeing some things, and you're probably not going to like what I'm saying. However, I'm going to say this to you because I need you to think about it and just take your own inventory. You know, I may be seeing it wrong, but It needs to be said. And so we talked about going back and looking at pictures and how the pictures tell the story. And I want for our listeners to think about that and to go back and look at those pictures. If you are someone who is struggling currently in a relationship, considering divorce or thinking about it, go back, look at those pictures. What do you see? What do you see in yourself back then? What do you see in yourself now? Ask your friends, how have I changed? Am I the same person? Am I better? Because this relationship should make you better. Exactly, Tanel. Be a real friend or bust. Am I worse? When did I change? What was the old me like? My family kept telling me it's like the old Tasha is back. And it was so interesting that they recognized that. And it wasn't that it was as if the old me had taken leave for something else and had been gone for quite a while. And now they were all excited and happy, like, okay, the old you is back. You're vibrant. You're happy. Some people kept telling me, you are glowing. Yes, I'm happy. I am happy. I am happy that I get to exercise the full me. I am happy that I get to make choices about what's in my best interest, solely my best interest, not the other person's. I don't have to care about your feelings. I don't have to care about your thoughts, your goals, your what you want. I get to decide for me, and that's a very empowering place. There's a lot of responsibility that comes with that also, but it's an exciting place to be, and it also can be very daunting no matter what. Okay, it is, but we can get through this. We can work this, right? We can do it. And so I want you guys to think about that as you're listening to, if you are that friend that's seeing some stuff in your friend, get some wise counsel, figure out how to gently have that conversation. If you know your friend is the kind that needs a 2x4 up the side of the head, bring the 2x4, because they need some people to be real in their lives with them to help them understand or just see what they don't see right in front of them. Don't be that person afterward that's like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you're back. What the hell? So I know you had some friends like that, and you had some ride or die friends who were with you. What is it that these listeners should take away and think about in terms of their friends, and what can they go, now that you're on the other side of this, what should they go ask their friends to help them get that reality check?
I don't even know that it was me asking my friends. I just know that the divorce showed me who my friends were.
Say that.
There were a lot of people who were around me when I was Reverend Angie. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then when I left the church, those friends, the true friends, came with me as far as it doesn't matter, because it didn't matter with the REV in front of my name, and it didn't matter without it in front of my name. It didn't matter if I was Christian or if I'm Onifa, if I'm practicing New African Vodun, if I am practicing Ifa. It didn't matter to them. What mattered to them was the woman that had been there for them, the woman whose company they enjoyed. I moved across the country when I left my marriage. And I was dealing with such bad depression. I literally had a friend a week for 4 weeks on a plane to come here and spend a week with me and to just get me together. I dropped a lot of weight. I didn't have any clothes. One of my girlfriends was like, okay, we need to go shopping. Let's go. And literally took me like a little kid, took me shopping, had me try on clothes, show her how I looked in them, and then she bought the clothes. Then I put her on a plane, another one comes, and she's like, oh, you don't have food in the house. Let's get groceries in here. Yeah. And then, so they were always, and then the other one just came and pampered me. She just came and was just like, you crying it out, cry it out. You screaming it out, scream it out. Let's sit on a patio. Let's go to the beach. Let's do whatever. Right. Their attentiveness was so enriching at a space where I was so vulnerable and could have been crushed and not recuperate. So first of all, divorce shows you who your true friends are.
Amen to that. And we are out of time. I swear this hour goes by so quickly. And, you know, I feel like there's so much to cover, but we will have another show next Sunday. I want you again to go back, do the work, know that you can get through this. Life will be better on the other side, and take care of yourself in the process. Thank you, Angela, for joining us again. Love you all. Thanks for the listeners, and we will be back again here next Sunday for I Do, I Did, I Don't on What's in It for the Black People Media. Take care.
Put that on God, girl, I'm loving you. Said it's easy. It's easy to love. Easy to love. Said it's easy. It's easy to love. Easy to love. Oh yeah. Loving you has always been easy 'cause you're beautiful. Loving you has always been wonderful, more than you'll ever know.